Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to tonight's webinar on 8 steps to cope and find joy after child loss. First of all, I want to say that I am so sorry that you are here, or more, the reason that you are here. You're here because you've lost a child, you're grieving, you're hurting, and you want some help in being able to move through the process. I must say you'll never get over it, and I don't expect you to, but we can move through it and move forward, and so that's why we're here tonight. So tonight we're going to cover a little bit of information. I'm going to give you part of my journey. We'll go over those 8 steps, and then the end that we'll look at it and see what your next steps are and what that involves. So I want to start with this and let you know that as we move through this, this is all about choices and your choice on what you want to do. And you may have all these different emotions bottling up inside of you since your child passed away. It could be anger, it could be a bad dream, it could be sadness, loneliness, and so many other things that are just all wrapped up and bottled inside of you, and that's normal. I want to let you know that that is normal. And recently I was listening to a webinar, a podcast actually, with Oprah Winfrey and Lady Gaga. And she applied so much of some things that have happened to Lady Gaga to not only her circumstances, but to life. And I took that to a bigger step. And I really felt that this particular quote really brings to light grief and how it can be the first step in our process. And it's called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance applies to every crisis, every difficulty, every challenge in your life. Stress comes from wanting something that isn't and doesn't change until you first accept it, and then you decide what to do next. Boy, that just so applied to the grief process for me. And what I mean by that is that it was something that if we can't accept that our child is gone and we continue to live in denial, then we won't be able to ever move forward with it. And it is a very difficult theory to wrap our head around, a very difficult circumstance to wrap our head around, but it's very important that it be done. And so it allows us to accept it, evaluate it, be curious, and then be able to make a decision as what to do next. So this is all about your choices and where you want to be, where you see yourself 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or the rest of your life. And we are here to help you to do grief on your terms. And the thing is that I want you to take a moment and evaluate where you are and how grief is impacting you. Is it impacting your relationships with a spouse? Is it impacting your relationships at work? Is it impacting your relationship with yourself and how you feel about yourself? What about your health? Are you losing sleep? Have you gained weight? Have you lost weight? Have you had circumstances come up, that inflammation, autoimmune disease? Are you feeling sick all the time? Those are things. You could have fatigue. It could be affecting your memory. Grief with the Oriental Asian medicine, grief sits in our lungs, and if you're having difficulty breathing or catching coughs, that is one thing that it can happen. So those are so many ways that grief can impact us. And so what I want to do is to encourage you to evaluate in this new norm and to be living and being able to move forward without your child. We can still remember them, and believe me, that's not my purpose, and we actually cover some of that on ways to remember your child, but to accept it. I want you to be open and explore the possibilities of what is next for you and how you can move forward. It doesn't happen just naturally. processing your child, it's being intentional. And that's where this comes together, is because it gives you some very important tools that you can use to be able to process and be intentional about your healing. So, sharing a little bit about myself. My name is Peggy Green, and I live in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And I have actually had 2 children pass away. One was 29 years ago. Her name is Courtney, and she passed away in an in-home daycare accident. And the phone call that I received, I was across town, I was working at the airport, and the call said, "You need to come to the hospital right away. Something's wrong with Courtney." And I was encouraged to have a coworker drive me, and I couldn't get a hold of Courtney's dad at the time. Cell phones weren't around, so I called my parents and asked them to meet me. And it was a drive like nothing else, rush hour traffic. My friend drove me down the side of the highway. He drove through stoplights. He waved traffic out of our way just in an effort to get us to the hospital. And as soon as I got to the hospital, after a harrowing, longer than imagined drive, my father and another gentleman were standing in the driveway of the emergency room. When I got close enough to read the name tag on the gentleman, it said chaplain. And I knew immediately that Courtney was dead. And my dad confirmed my worst fears. We were then whisked away to a private room with my mother and my dad and myself, and waited until Courtney's father got there. And then we were allowed to go see her only after I begged and pleaded, because I was told that it wouldn't be pretty, it would be ugly, and it was. But I knew that I had to see her because it was so important for me to grasp that. And it was just horrible. And I even remember shouting at her. I didn't touch her, but I shouted at her, "Courtney, Courtney, wake up." And that was such an insane moment. But understand that those moments, they're not always logical, that they'll come up. So that was my first child, Courtney. She was only 9 months old. My second child was just 18 months ago, and that was Connor. And again, it was a phone call, a Friday afternoon in rush hour traffic. And my oldest daughter, she called me, and I heard her saying something like, "Oh yeah, he's been sick lately." And I called into the phone, called and called, "Brittany, Brittany, Brittany, Brittany." And she didn't answer, so I hung up and I called her on another phone number. And when she answered, she told me, "Mom, this is the hardest thing I've ever will tell you, but Connor is dead." I was in shock. I yelled out to God and said, "Why? Why, God? Oh, why, God? Oh, why?" I couldn't understand it. It wasn't fair. So you see, I understand. I've been through it twice. I've also experienced other family losses. My father and my sister, they both passed away shortly after stressful life events from cancer. It surfaced. They fought it, but they didn't win. My mom has passed away. I've lost a niece. And I'm so determined that I'm going to keep healthy, and that I have 2 daughters to live for and a grandson now. I have a purpose. It's so important for me. I am a survivor. I'm resilient. I am optimistic. And that's why I'm here. And that's to help you as you process and move through your journey. I have been able to focus on a purpose to live. I mentioned my girls and my grandson, and also helping others in their loss journey. I've written a book, Life After Child Loss, and it's here that I'm able to put into words the tools and techniques that I've used to be able to process and move through my losses, my multiple losses. I've been blessed with answers to my questions from my higher power. I attended Al-Anon because my ex-husband was and is an alcoholic, and I attended that, and I learned so much and in these tools in helping me to get through life's challenges. I know I didn't cause things, I didn't cure them, and I can't control them. So that applies to our grief process. I couldn't cure my dad and my sister. I didn't control what happened in my daughter's life. I didn't control my son taking his own life. But I've been blessed with these answers. And had I not had that, I would be in a different place. I also want to share that it takes a lot from my heart for me to share this, but I've taken some personal growth and discovered that Brene Brown, who does a lot of personal growth, I've been part of several of her personal growth programs, and to be vulnerable and have the courage to speak out and share with others. So this is part of my journey. And one of the things I want to encourage you to even think about as you're listening to this and looking at what the next steps are is, remember when you board an airplane and the flight attendants go through all the instructions, they say, in the event that the mask drop, the air oxygen drops, put it on yourself first, and then you can help others. Their point is that if you're on the ground passed out, you can't help others. That's the same way with your grief. You need to be able to take care of yourself. And this is just such a beginning. Put on that oxygen mask and help yourself first. Be proactive with your steps and in your self-care. And that includes mentally and exercise and sleep and nutrition and water and taking care of your thoughts. So what I want to share now is the framework for regaining joy. It's those steps that we're taking. And it's offering a framework to use. Okay? Let you know that I'm starting here with the ones that I found to be easier, that are tried and true, that I've used for such a long time. And it's a great place for you to start. Now, each one of these steps is not linear. It's not from A to B, B to C. You may go from A to F and back to C and back and forth. You may use them simultaneously. There's no right way to use them. Use them in the order, but just learn what they are and being open to that. And so those steps include journaling, finding your support system, finding your higher power, talking about your child, that elephant in the room that they can become. Talk about your child's belongings, how to deal with memorials and birthdays, and how to take care of yourself, self-care, and even looking at personal growth. Each step, it can vary. Use them though. The journey will not be easy, I can guarantee that, but you can have hope after going through these steps of being able to have tools to use in different circumstances. Discover your purpose to move forward. Who is that for? And it can be for you. Most absolutely, it can and should be for you. So I want to go ahead and launch into our first step. And our first step is actually journaling. And what I found is that journaling is something that I have used in a lifetime. I started journaling in high school and have continued to journal throughout my lifetime. And the thing is that it's something that I've used and not used and I've come back to. So remember, I talk about the steps, but journaling, it is a place to just do a brain dump, put all your thoughts out there, and it's not like there's any correct punctuation, any grammar, nobody's grading it, nobody's judging it, but it gives you that opportunity to put everything out. And really what it does is you can write down your thoughts. I encourage people to write down even what happened the day that your child passed, because for some illogical reason, we hold into our brain the things and the description of what happened. And so what I would think about doing is writing that down. Write your child a love letter. Those are some things that you can do. Journaling is a safe place for you to journal all of that, to put down your thoughts, and nobody's judging you. You know, your journal can be just a simple notebook. It can be a notebook that if you're concerned about somebody else reading it, you can lock it up. You can put it into a filing cabinet. You can have it one that requires a lock. There's so many different things that you can do. And one of the things I even encourage you to do is to date it, and you can go back and revisit your entries, and I really recommend that you do, because you can see what your thoughts are and how things have changed and progressed. And most people see that progression, that they're coming out of things, that they may have more positive thoughts. Now the thing is that there's two types of grief, and one is normal grief, and then there's one that's complicated grief. And what that is those who are in complicated grief have depression, suicidal thoughts, and cannot function at all, can't get out of bed, cry 24/7. That's more of a complicated grief, but you may not see that in yourself until you write it down and evaluate your own thoughts. So it's a good way to really measure your progress and see your progress. And when they're in the middle of it, we don't always see that. So it's also a place that you can remember your loved one, write down memories and things that made you laugh and made you smile. It's an opportunity for you to clear your head. I just love journaling. I've picked it up again the day after my son passed away. I hadn't been journaling for a while, but I definitely see progress in my thoughts. So our next step is to find your tribe. And finding your tribe is finding those people who you know you can count on for support. In this loss journey with children, it is a difficult journey, and people find it very difficult to speak to you. They don't know how to speak to you. They don't know how to help you. So finding those people that are going to give you that direct support. So where do you find that community? You may find that community at church. You may bond with another mother who's lost a child. This is a great place to do some bonding. And where I found some bonding, I had so many resources. I mentioned the Brené Brown. And there I have a group of women who I've worked with her program, and they have been walked alongside with me as I've done this. I have people from church. I have people from my Juice Plus community, which is amazing. It's I received a phone call from our corporate office expressing their condolences. And then even on the local level, people on my team who have been there to support me. And then I've even had some friends that have been friends for such a long time that they've been through this twice with me as well. And what I do is I can count on a few of those who understand and don't have expectations of me getting over my losses, but that they're there for me to listen, for them to listen to me, and for them to help me. And sometimes it's just to be present and sit next to me, and that can be literally or figuratively, but being there in my moments. One of the things too is that as we process this, I know I found that I was more empathetic with other mothers who have lost children. That was really important, because now we are in this child loss club. We've never really wanted the invitation. We were thrown into it, but this gives me some more empathy and understanding for other mothers. I've grown in my maturity. I definitely feel much stronger in the way I respond to things, and learning how to give back in these tough times has been important. One of my mentors, he said that in times of difficulty, instead of focusing inward on our problems, to give back and give outward, that actually can be very helpful. And giving back to other people actually increases the good endorphins, the feel-good endorphins. And it's just a natural way to help others. And we can mourn with others. And when we find our tribe, we also prevent isolation. It's could be very easy to stay curled up in a ball, crying on the couch all day. But when you have others that you can call upon, they can come over and sit with you. They can have you join them for coffee, a walk, come to their home, someplace that you feel safe and loved. So finding your tribe is just such an important piece of this. The next one I want to talk about is how a higher power can help you with your grief. Now, I'm going to refer to my higher power as God. I'm going to say to believe or not to believe. That is, again, up to you, whether your higher power is God or not. I know that Connor, he went through a 12-step recovery program, and that's one of the things that they encourage members to do, is to find their higher power. And for him, his higher power is being outdoors, in the great outdoors, where he could ground himself and get some fresh air. And so that, for me, is part of my grounding, is being outdoors, but I really call upon a higher power. So I want to share something, an important lesson from the altar, from the higher power, at Connor's memorial service. And the pastor who spoke, there was a large congregation that attended his funeral, and the pastor just shared with me afterwards that he felt that there was a large group of people who didn't believe in God, and that he wanted to make sure that they understand it wasn't Connor that killed God. It was Connor that took his own life. Connor had free will. And so he shared that God was standing next to him and saying, no, don't do it. No, don't do it. No, don't do it. Don't take your life. I've got you. But Connor made that decision. And so that has been so helpful to me, because God didn't kill him. And then I wanted to share another story from a bereavement chaplain that I've worked with. And one of the things that he said is that because Connor took his own life, most of the times when that happened is that those who die by suicide have demons sitting on their shoulders. And Connor had demons that those were the ones that were telling him to do it. But they were also the ones that were making his life so dark and desperate. And now he doesn't have those demons sitting on his shoulders anymore. And I'm so grateful for that. I can't imagine what it'd be like. And so relating to my higher power and having those conversations, God wants us to talk to him. God even allows us to yell at him. God allows us to say what's on our mind, because God is a healing God. And along with that, I also believe in life after death. I believe in heaven, and I believe that Connor and his sister Courtney and my mom and my dad and my sister are all in heaven, and that they are there together, and that they are actually my spirits guiding me, and that they're looking down on me. They're my angels, and I don't know what I would do without them. As a matter of fact, today I had an opportunity to hear from Connor, and that he's telling me that he loves me, and that he's not done on this earth, and that we're working together along with God to spread hope and joy and happiness after child loss. And prayer is such a way. I said God just allows us to pray. He allows us to yell at him, because he's big. He's big, and he can take it, and he can help you. You can pray for healing. You can pray for peace. There's so many things. You pick, you choose. Just talk to God like he was your best friend. And then I also want to share that there's rituals, and that how important it is to have those rituals. The rituals that we have are not for the person that's passed. Those rituals of having a memorial are about those people who still yet live, because it helps us to grasp the concept that that loved one is no longer with us, and that it's that opportunity to say earthly goodbyes. It's an opportunity to say, I will see you in heaven. So our higher power, believe me, it's somebody that I truly can count on. So our next step is talking about the elephant in the room. And child loss, I feel like I'm just continuing to say this, but it's such a unique journey. And when you bring it up with another mother who hasn't experienced this, they are aghast with disbelief. I don't know how you do it. I can't imagine. And then they accept that, and then it comes up again, and you want to talk about your child, and nobody else does. Or they're afraid to bring up your child because they're afraid that it's going to hurt your heart, that you're going to cry. Um, and you may, and I think you most likely will. And the thing is that you may cry, but that's okay. That is part of the grief process. I want to share one of the stories on that elephant in the room. My youngest one, or oldest one, Courtney, at Christmas time, we went over to the grandparents' house on her dad's side, and Grandma had a little apple tree with little ornaments in it with Courtney's name. And by this time, I had Brittany and Connor, and when we went over there, Grandma would take Courtney's apple off the tree. She was afraid that Connor and Brittany would ask questions because the cousins knew, but my kids never did know yet. And it's because their dad didn't want to talk about her. He didn't want to share. And I think he also just didn't know how to share with our kids. So I took the opportunity with the photo album that my sister made and sat down and shared with my kids. Because it's really important that they grow up knowing that. And I'm not sure how your child has passed away, but suicide couples on top of child loss. And so many people think that it's shameful and that I should be taking responsibility for what my son did. And that's not the case. I want to let you know that it is not, and he made those choices with his own free will. So other things that you may want to do in talking about that elephant in the room, if we talk about the tribe, is get a few of those very special people that you feel comfortable talking with, and that those are the ones that you can count on. I would say 2 to 3 people. You may also, this group is really good, and you may find multiple resources work for you, such as with a professional. Talking has been huge for me, and it has helped me tremendously. And what I would also say is to teach those that are close to you on how to help you. I had somebody today who I had just met and was asking questions and curious, and she started to ask a question and said, no, I don't want to ask you. I don't want to upset you. And I asked her if I could make a suggestion, and she said yes. And I said, ask the person if you can ask questions. I think that is one way to be able to do this. Okay. And so that was very helpful to her. So you can teach others on how to help you. Now, how to deal with loved ones and belongings and creating a memorial gets a little bit more entangled, and that is our next step. I cleaned out Connor's room. He was living in a house with some roommates, and he wasn't a big materialistic guy. He had his bed, he had his side table, he had his TV, he had his Xbox, and you know, he was a skateboarder, and he had a hobby of playing hockey, and he had a chest full of clothes and clothes in the closet. And to me, it was really important that I clear that room, clear that space as soon as possible for his roommates. And so we went over, the girls and I, and my brother was there, and we gave away his tie-dye t-shirts to his roommates. We kept some of those shirts for ourselves because by now we knew that we were going to have a memorial service on a Friday for Tie-Dye Friday. And then the rest of those things got packed up and put into a bag and taken to my closet. I was able to do that, but it took me a good year before I was able to do anything else with it. And when that happened, I was able to give away his extra t-shirts in bags that are made for the homeless, self-care bags. And so I know that those clothes went to a good purpose, which is really nice. And the thing is that you may want help on deciding how you want to remember your child. You may enlist the help of a family member or a friend. And, Connor was cremated, and we're planted a tree at a skate park because he was such a skater, and we'll have a dedication for that. But you may have pictures on the wall, you may have pictures on a counter, you may have a graveside, headstone. You may have a marker on the side of the highway. There's so many ways I've seen, necklaces made. This is a necklace that was gifted to me, or seen quilts made, or pictures. So it's the best way that works for you in helping you to remember your child. It helps with closure, it helps with remembering your child, and let the siblings decide what works for them as well. So the next thing is coping with holidays, birthdays, and first, our next step. And, the thing is that equipping ourselves with the tools and resources for these is because these days happen every 365 days. The only things that don't happen, again, are the first. But then we have seconds and thirds and fourths. And so here it's so important for you to honor your feelings and really find that works for you. And I know that what worked for me on Connor's first angelversary was being with my girls and being with them to support each other. We planned a day together, massages and lunch, so that we could actually recognize Connor's passing, but then also recognize that we were here and alive and doing well. You may choose to do something entirely different. I've seen, memorials, events, families get together for different things. So those are some things that have worked for me. And what I want to keep you from staying frozen in your grief. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And we've talked about journaling. So this is one of the things that I suggest that you do, is that you journal on these days. Connor passed away on December 14th. And Christmas is shortly thereafter, my birthday and New Year's. And they were somber days. We still were together for Christmas. It was a quiet day. And then for my birthday, we went to dinner at my usual place. And I kept expecting Connor to come flying through the door, because he was always infamously late, and coming running down the stairs of where we were seated and saying, "Hi, Mom." And I was anticipating that, but it never happened. But I was surrounded by family. And Christmas, having it happen around Christmas, it's believing in God and believing that Connor was in a better place, is in a better place. And the first that happened, just, the first birthday, how do you deal with that? And I think it's those decisions on, do you want to have family together? Do you want to celebrate it? I mean, they were alive. And so those are your choices. We just got together because his younger sister's birthday was just a few days later. And so we always would do something. And so we continued to celebrate Hannah's birthday and still recognize Connor's. So we spent time, talked together, and I even went through photo albums. And what's really helpful in that is having other family members share their stories of your child. I learned so many things about my son I never knew. He was 24, and it was just amazing to hear those stories. So our next step is self-care. And we talked a little about the effects of grief on your body and what it does to you, and how it can make you sick, and how your lungs can be impacted, and how you may not sleep and gain weight or lose weight. So this is where we get to focus on the physical body. And the advantages of self-care is that you're not being selfish, and that you were able to have that piece of it when you're also focusing on the mental piece. And what does self-care mean? It's putting a priority on yourself and taking care of all those aspects. So some of the things that we can do in self-care is to exercise and get sleep and drink water, eat nutritiously, do meditation or yoga or Reiki. Or one of the things that I found is to have a support animal. Support dogs are huge. We got our latest puppy, Luna, in January, about 1 month after Connor passed away, and she is a support dog for my daughter, which is wonderful. And exercise, even getting outside and taking a walk 2 times a day for 10 or 15 minutes, increasing those endorphins. And then nutrition is so critical and essential. It's easy to want to go towards the carbohydrates, the unhealthy meals, the things that have sugars in them, that really have no nutritional value. It's easy to do that. I get it, because that's comforting to us in those times. But ultimately, in the end, it does not serve us well at all. So I mentioned that, my dad, my sister passed away from cancer. I've been taking for 9 years a product of powdered fruits and vegetables in a capsule. It's called Juice Plus. And I know that that has helped me in getting through this journey in a healthy manner. I haven't been sick, so I'm very grateful for that. And I hope and pray that God will continue to help me stay healthy. But the day after Connor passed away, I doubled up on the capsules I was taking, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to eat well. Grief destroys our routine. It destroys our ability and our desire to feed ourselves. And so I knew that nutrition would be invaluable, and I have not been sick since he passed away. So that's really important. And I want to share something. Self-care doesn't necessarily mean busy and being distracted. I also encourage you in your journaling to sit in your grief and acknowledge it, and then look at what the next step is. Okay. Our 8th step in this is the question of, can grief be an impetus to personal growth? And I know for me it has been huge. I wrote a book. Now, I must say that you don't have to write a book. That's a big step. But maybe there's something that you've been thinking about doing, and I've always said, I want to do this. Well, trying something new helps with your brain, helps to stimulate your brain to think, and helps to stimulate the motor functions that it takes to do it. Maybe you wanted to take up knitting or crocheting, take up a new sport, or reading more, maybe taking a language class. There's so many things that you can do to have personal growth. And personal growth is a change, and it's learning something new. And along with that, writing a book, I gained a new appreciation of life. I spoke to Connor a few days before he passed away, and I remember that conversation. That conversation's written down in my journal, and it makes me understand how quick and how short it is, and that it's so important to tell those that I love you, that I love them. Spirituality, I've grown in my spirit, in my relationship with God. I read the Bible almost every day, and I journal about it, and I ask God to show me the lesson that I'm getting out of that. And also, learning something new can be the opportunity to empower yourself. When we challenge ourselves and then are victorious over it, that then can translate into other things that we hear, see, and feel, and how we respond. You may find a new purpose. I've seen organizations started, foundations started, families coming together because of this. That new perspective on life, that it's short and that you love people, and new values, and spending time with people. So grief can be an impetus to personal growth. You can write down some ideas and evaluate it and ask yourself, where would you be interested in starting? Start with something that you feel comfortable with and that you feel that you will be successful at. So I want to say, in conclusion, that this is a grief journey. It is tough. You will face obstacles, I can guarantee it. You know, when it comes to journaling, you may think that it doesn't work. You may lose it. You may be concerned about somebody reading it. Those are all possibilities. And then as far as you could also feel overwhelmed. And then what about your higher power or finding your tribe? Finding your tribe is difficult. People sometimes just don't know what to say, don't know what to do, and they avoid us. And after a few weeks, they expect us to be back to normal and have gotten over it. And that's not the case. They expect us to be the strong one. In the midst of this, we need somebody that we can lean into tremendously. So then we can talk about the elephant in the room. How do we get people to talk about our child? Others think you should be over it. They don't understand. They don't know our grief. And difficult for them to talk about your child. And finding your higher power, you may have had faith and you may be losing it, or you may have others that say, you know, God's responsible for your child's death. They may discourage you from finding a higher power. Religion is something, that I believe that is something that is worth exploring. Exploring whether it is something. And if you do that, I think you could find some answers with that. And how to remember your child and creating those memorials, and what's right for you, what's right for the family. That can be such a challenge as well. Holidays and birthdays, well, they come around 365 days. And without some sort of plan and action, some prevention, we can be destroyed by them. We can anticipate them and relive the horrors and the tragedies. That doesn't serve us. We need to find something that's going to work better for us. Personal growth, well, you may not know where you want to start. There's so many options. I did it by writing a book. And then self-care. How do you start? You know, what's your background? What's the right thing to do? So when it's the lost journey, it's never over, it's never ending. Grief is continuous. And so asking if this is the time for you to be asking for help in moving forward, help and assistance in deciding what your next steps are. I am now an empath. I get it even more so the second time around. I'm an author. I am Superwoman. I never thought of myself as an author or a Superwoman, but I've been able to put one foot in front of the other. I'm blessed to make it. I'm blessed that I am processing and surviving the loss of my family, the loss of my children. I am so blessed to be able to do that. I'm blessed to be here and that you are listening to me and that I can help you. There is hope. You just have to grasp onto that rope, and that's something that we are offering here. You know, so take one small step. I want to ask you, if this is something that is of interest to you, then let's go ahead and get you on my calendar and we can chat and determine if this is really the next step in helping you and walking alongside with you in your lost journey. I would be honored, and it's a 45-minute consultation. We'll really just take a look at it and see what your next steps are. So you get to make the decision, you make the choice. So I am putting that in my in the chat box here, and you can check it out and see where you can get onto my calendar for a 45-minute consultation. So we'll move that down over here. And I want to say thank you for attending tonight. Again, I'm so sorry for your loss and the reason that you are here. It is difficult, but there is hope. You can find joy and have the tools and resources to be able to cope. So I want to bless you in saying that I'm so glad that you're here. And please do schedule, an opportunity to come chat with me, visit. It's all virtual.